My boyfriend hid me for 8 months, saying I was just a friend, until his brother accidentally introduced me as his girlfriend in front of his entire family. His phone was buzzing on my nightstand, and he was nowhere to be found. His group chat was lighting up with messages about guys' night while I stared at text after text, proving he'd been lying to everyone about dating me. Grant's been saying he's too focused on work for relationships, Connor had written, claims he's sworn off dating until he makes partner. Grant's response from 2 hours earlier made my adrenaline start pumping. I'm just not in a place where I want to get serious with anyone right now, keeping my options open while I figure out what I really want. 8 months of what I thought was an exclusive relationship, and he was telling his best friend he was keeping his options open. I scrolled up through months of messages where Grant consistently told his friends he was single, completely, totally, proudly single. The bathroom door slammed shut down the hall and water started running. Grant was taking a shower, completely unaware that his phone had just destroyed everything I thought I knew about us. I grabbed my own phone and started taking photos of his screen. Screenshot after screenshot of conversations where my boyfriend of 8 months denied my existence to everyone who mattered in his life. The shower was still running when I found the group chat from his college friends planning a Vegas trip for last month. Grant had declined, telling them he was visiting his sick grandmother in Phoenix. That was the same weekend he'd told me he was visiting his sick grandmother in Phoenix. But the Vegas trip messages showed his friends joking about Grant's mysterious social life and how he'd become a hermit since starting his new job. The water stopped running. I shoved his phone back exactly where he'd left it and pretended to be asleep when he came back into the bedroom. "Sorry, babe, forgot my phone," he whispered, grabbing it from the nightstand. I kept my eyes closed and my breathing steady while he got dressed for work. The whole time, Connor's words echoed in my head. "We're starting to think you're secretly married or in witness protection or something." His friends thought he was hiding something. They just had no idea that something was me, which is how I ended up lying awake at 6 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and finally admitting what I'd been refusing to see for months. Grant wasn't private about our relationship. He was ashamed of it. Let's rewind. I work night shifts at Murphy's Diner, a 24-hour place that's seen better decades. Cracked vinyl booths, fluorescent lights that flicker like they're having seizures, and a coffee machine that sounds like it's dying every time someone uses it. Grant showed up there one Tuesday around midnight, looking exhausted in an expensive suit that didn't belong in a place where the floor is permanently sticky and the pie comes from a freezer. He was different from our usual customers who were either too tired or too drunk to make eye contact. Grant actually talked to me like I was human instead of just the person bringing him food. That should have been my first clue that something was off about this whole situation. At first I brushed off the weird patterns in how Grant planned our dates. He always wanted to go to restaurants in other towns instead of local places. "I like trying new spots," he'd say when I suggested the Italian place downtown. "Plus it's more romantic when it's just us, away from the usual crowd." Made sense at the time. Who doesn't want romantic dinners in cute little towns where you can focus on each other without distractions? Then I started noticing we never went anywhere during normal hours in our own town. Coffee dates at weird times when downtown was empty. Weekend plans that involved 40-minute drives to suburbs I'd never heard of. When I suggested Murphy's Pub, the popular happy hour spot where young professionals hang out after work, Grant would wrinkle his nose and find cocktail bars in different cities. "The drinks are better at that place in Riverside," he'd say, already pulling up directions. More creative bartenders. But I started wondering if the real appeal was that none of his friends would be there to see us together. Second thing that should have been obvious was how Grant acted when we accidentally ran into people he knew. Happened twice in 8 months. First time was at a gas station when his coworker pulled up to the next pump. Grant went from relaxed and chatty to tense and fake smiling in about 2 seconds. He barely acknowledged the guy, gave him a quick nod and hurried me back to the car like we were running from something. "Work relationships are complicated," he explained afterward. "I try to keep personal and professional lives separate." Second time was worse. We were at Westfield Mall when a group of his college friends spotted him near the food court. They rushed over all excited to catch up, and Grant looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. He introduced me as my friend Noelle instead of his girlfriend. When one of them joked about Grant's mysterious dating life, asking if he was ever going to settle down, Grant laughed awkwardly and changed the subject to work. I confronted him in the car afterward, trying to stay calm even though I felt like I'd been slapped. "Why did you introduce me as your friend?" "I didn't want to make it weird. Those guys are gossips. Everything becomes a big deal with them." Third red flag was social media. Grant posted constantly about work achievements, weekend activities, nights out with friends, photos from hiking trips, restaurant check-ins, group shots from events and parties. But in 8 months of dating, I'd never appeared in a single post. Not even my hand holding a coffee cup or my shadow in a sunset photo. He'd take pictures of our romantic weekend getaways, but somehow I never made it into any of them. Photos of the cabin, the restaurant, the city skyline, our meals, everything except me. When I'd tag him in photos on my own social media, he'd like them, but never share them or comment in ways that acknowledged we were together. It was like I existed in some parallel version of his life that never intersected with his real world. Maybe I was overreacting. That's what everyone told me when I started mentioning my concerns to friends and family. "Some people are just more private," my roommate Lisa said while we were doing dishes. "My ex never wanted to post about us either. Some guys don't like broadcasting their relationships." My sister Anna agreed during our weekly phone call. Maybe he's old-fashioned about keeping romance separate from other areas of his life. Even my mom dismissed my concerns. "Not everyone broadcasts their relationships, honey. Your father and I dated for 2 years before he introduced me to his poker buddies." Everyone had reasonable explanations for Grant's behavior. I was being insecure, demanding, reading too much into normal privacy preferences. But something deep down told me this was different. This wasn't about being private. This felt like being hidden. Until I found out about the holiday party and realized I wasn't paranoid at all. Grant's company was having their annual holiday party. All employees could bring a +1, and I'd been excited for weeks about finally meeting his coworkers. I'd bought a new dress that cost 3 days of tips and gotten my hair done at an actual salon instead of cutting it myself in my bathroom mirror. 2 days before the party, Grant showed up at my apartment looking anxious. "Bad news about the holiday party," he said, not meeting my eyes. "They changed the policy. Employees only now. Budget constraints." I was disappointed but tried to be understanding. "That's too bad. Maybe we can do something special just the two of us that night instead." "Actually, I still have to go. Mandatory for career advancement. But I'll make it up to you afterward." The next day, I saw the photos on social media. Couples everywhere dancing and celebrating together, women in cocktail dresses posing with men in suits, group shots of the whole office with spouses and girlfriends and boyfriends all mixed together. Grant had lied to keep me away from his professional world. That's when I started doing detective work of my own instead of just accepting his explanations. I began paying closer attention to Grant's social media, and what I found made everything click into place. He posted regularly from restaurants and bars around town, places he'd told me were too crowded or not his style when I'd suggested them. But he wasn't posting alone. Group shots with friends, work colleagues, even what looked like dates with other people. One photo from Vino's, the wine bar I'd specifically asked to go to, showed Grant sitting close to a blonde woman in an expensive dress, both of them laughing at something off camera. The caption read, "Great wine, better company." I checked the timestamp. Tuesday night when he'd told me he was working late and couldn't see me because of a client presentation. The woman looked like she belonged in Grant's world in ways I never could. Designer handbag, flawless makeup, the kind of confident smile that suggested she'd never worried about paying rent or making tips. She looked like someone who went to charity galas and country club events, who had never worked in food service or counted quarters for bus fare. I screenshot the photo and spent an hour analyzing every detail, trying to understand what she had that I didn't. The second piece of evidence came when I was working a Saturday morning shift at the diner. Grant's best friend Connor walked in with a group of guys who looked like they'd been partying all night. I'd heard Grant mention Connor dozens of times, but had never actually met him. Connor was supposedly Grant's closest friend from college, his roommate for 3 years. As I was taking his order, Connor mentioned Grant's name in conversation with his friends. "Grant's been so mysterious lately," Connor said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Claims he's too busy for anything social, like he's got some secret he's keeping from all of us." I pretended to check other tables while listening to their conversation. "Maybe he's finally dating someone," another guy suggested. Connor laughed like the idea was ridiculous. "Grant? He's been saying he's too focused on work for relationships. Claims he doesn't want any distractions from building his career. That's what they all say until they meet the right girl." Nah, Grant's serious about staying single. He keeps declining invitations to double dates and couples events, says he's prioritizing professional development over personal relationships. They kept talking, and I learned that Grant had been telling his closest friends he was completely single and not interested in dating anyone. When Connor mentioned a guy's trip to Vegas that Grant had skipped, claiming he was too busy with work, I realized it was the same weekend Grant had told me he was visiting his sick grandmother. When I brought Connor his check, I took a deep breath and introduced myself. "I'm Noelle, by the way. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too," he said pleasantly. "You look familiar. Do you know Grant Sawyer by any chance?" This was my chance to expose Grant's lie, to ask Connor why Grant had been telling his friends he was single. "Yeah, I know Grant. Small world. How do you know him?" Instead of saying we were dating, I heard myself say, "Oh, just through mutual friends." I was protecting the same secret that was killing me, covering for the man who was apparently so ashamed of me that he'd rather lie to his best friend than admit we were together. The third piece of evidence shattered whatever denial I had left. I was scrolling Facebook when I saw a post from Grant's sister Ashley about her engagement party the previous weekend. Dozen photos from what looked like a country club event with perfectly arranged flowers and guests in designer clothes. The caption read, "So grateful for all the family and friends who celebrated with us. Special thanks to my baby brother Grant for being such a supportive best man. Can't wait for him to find someone special too." The engagement party was last Saturday. Grant had told me he was visiting his sick grandmother in Phoenix and couldn't see me because of her medical appointments. Not only had he lied about where he was, but his sister was posting publicly about hoping he'd find someone special while he'd been dating me for 8 months. His own family didn't know I existed. I scrolled through all the photos looking for Grant. There he was in group shots, wearing a navy suit I'd never seen, looking relaxed and happy in ways I'd rarely witnessed. Dancing with his mother, giving a toast with champagne, hugging Ashley while she showed off her ring. He looked completely comfortable in his element, surrounded by people who clearly adored him. And I was nowhere to be found because nobody even knew I existed. That's when I realized Grant wasn't just private or introverted. He was actively maintaining a completely separate version of his life where I didn't exist. People I trusted kept taking his side when I tried to explain what I'd discovered. "Maybe he wants to be sure about the relationship before introducing you to everyone," Lisa suggested when I showed her the Facebook photos. 8 months isn't that long in the grand scheme of things. "Lisa, he's been lying about being single to his best friend. Maybe he's just not ready for that level of commitment yet. Maybe you're putting too much pressure on him." I'm not asking him to propose, I'm asking him to acknowledge that I exist. Maybe he's just private about personal stuff. Some people don't like mixing romantic relationships with other areas of their lives. My sister sided with Grant when I called her crying about the engagement party deception. "Noelle, you've always been sensitive about your job and background. Maybe you're reading into things that aren't there. Maybe you're looking for problems because you're insecure." He lied about his sister's engagement party. He told his best friend he's not dating anyone. Men are weird about relationships sometimes. Maybe he doesn't think 8 months is long enough to start making family introductions. 8 months is long enough to at least admit to your friends that you're seeing someone. Maybe, but pushing him isn't going to help. Maybe you need to give him space to open up at his own pace. Even my mom dismissed my concerns during our weekly phone call. "Honey, not everyone broadcasts their relationships. Maybe Grant is just old-fashioned about keeping romance separate from other areas of his life." No one wanted to believe that Grant was ashamed of me. It was easier to suggest that I was insecure or misreading the situation than to acknowledge that someone was treating me like a dirty secret. But I couldn't ignore what I'd seen with my own eyes. The social media evidence, the overheard conversations, the elaborate lies about family events. I started noticing other patterns I'd previously dismissed as quirks. The way Grant would scroll past my Instagram stories without liking them, even though I could see he'd viewed them. The way he'd change the subject whenever I talked about work or mentioned my coworkers by name. The way he'd tense up whenever we were in public together in our own town, constantly scanning the area like he was worried about being spotted. The way he'd suddenly remember urgent errands whenever I suggested activities that might involve running into his social or professional circles. Now it wasn't just about being hidden. It was about understanding why I wasn't good enough to be claimed by someone who claimed to love me. I started obsessing over every detail of my appearance and personality, trying to figure out what was so shameful about me that Grant couldn't bear to let his friends and family know we were together. Was it my job at the diner? My background growing up in a small town? The way I talked? The fact that I'd never been to Europe or owned designer clothes? I started dressing differently, trying to look more polished and professional. I researched conversation topics that would make me seem more sophisticated. Art, wine, current events, books I'd never actually read. I even considered lying about what I did for work, crafting a fake story about working in healthcare administration instead of admitting I was a waitress. The worst part was that Grant seemed to enjoy having this secret relationship, affectionate and attentive when we were alone, but shutting down the moment there was any risk of our worlds colliding. When I'd bring up future plans involving his people or public events, he'd change the subject or find reasons why it wouldn't work out. I was living a double life. Grant's hidden girlfriend who got expensive dinners and romantic weekends, and my authentic self who had friends and family and a real life that Grant showed no interest in being part of. The two versions felt increasingly incompatible. All I wanted was to understand why I wasn't good enough to be claimed. Somehow it turned into 8 months of trying to prove I was worthy of being acknowledged. That's when I decided to gather actual proof instead of just collecting red flags and hoping someone would finally believe me. I started with the most obvious evidence. Grant's social media told a story of a single man who occasionally went on dates but wasn't seriously involved with anyone. I went through every post from the past 8 months, documenting the pattern. Photos from restaurants where we'd had dates, but taken on different occasions when he was there with other people. Pictures from events and gatherings I'd never heard about, despite us spending most weekends together. Work happy hours, birthday parties, holiday celebrations where everyone looked professionally successful and perfectly polished. Group shots from weekend activities with college friends I'd never met. Hiking trips, brewery tours, sporting events where Grant looked relaxed and social in ways I rarely saw. It was like watching someone else's life. Someone who had the same face as my boyfriend, but lived in a completely different world where I didn't exist. I made a folder on my phone with screenshots of every relevant post, timestamps, captions, tagged locations, building a case that proved Grant was actively maintaining 2 separate lives. The restaurant evidence was particularly damning. Grant had posted from Meridian, the popular downtown bistro, at least 6 times in the past 4 months. Every time I'd suggested going there, he'd found reasons why somewhere else would be better. That place is so pretentious, he'd say. I'd rather go somewhere more authentic. But authentic apparently meant 30 minutes away in towns where nobody would recognize either of us. I started keeping a record of his excuses versus his actual activities. The pattern was undeniable once I laid it out chronologically. March 15th, Grant posts from Meridian with work colleagues. Caption, best lunch spot in town. March 18th, I suggest Meridian for our anniversary dinner. Grant says it's too pretentious and books a reservation in Riverside instead. April 2nd, Grant posts from Murphy's Pub with college friends. Caption, nothing beats happy hour with the crew. April 5th, I suggest Murphy's Pub for drinks. Grant says the atmosphere isn't romantic enough and finds a cocktail bar 40 minutes away. The evidence kept piling up, but I needed something more concrete than social media posts and overheard conversations. That's when I remembered Grant had left his laptop open the previous weekend while he was making breakfast. He'd been logged into his email and I'd seen the preview of a message from his sister about wedding planning. I felt terrible about snooping, but I needed to know if his family really didn't know about me or if there was some other explanation for everything. The next time Grant left his laptop unattended, I did something I'd never done before in any relationship. I looked through his emails. I found months of correspondence with his family where Grant consistently portrayed himself as single and focused on his career. His mother had sent multiple emails asking if he was dating anyone, expressing concern that he was working too much and not making time for personal relationships. Grant's responses were variations of the same theme. Still single, mom? Just focusing on building my career right now. Maybe next year I'll start thinking about settling down. His sister Ashley had emailed about setting him up with her friends from law school. Grant had politely declined, saying he wasn't interested in dating anyone seriously until he felt more established professionally. I don't want to waste anyone's time when I'm not ready for commitment. He'd written to Ashley 3 months into our relationship. 3 months into what I thought was a committed relationship, Grant was telling his sister he wasn't ready for commitment. But the emails revealed something else that confused me. Grant seemed genuinely stressed about family expectations and pressure to find someone suitable to settle down with. His father had sent a long email about Grant's future and the importance of finding a partner who would fit well with their family values and social circle. Your mother and I just want you to be happy, his father had written. But we also hope you'll find someone who understands our world and can be a good partner for the life you're building. Grant's response had been anxious and defensive. I know what kind of person I should be looking for. I'm just not sure I'm ready for that level of commitment yet. Everything feels complicated. The emails painted a picture of a family with specific expectations about who Grant should date and marry. Upper middle class expectations about education, career prospects, social compatibility. I started understanding why Grant might feel conflicted about introducing a diner waitress to parents who clearly had opinions about suitable partners for their son. But understanding didn't make the deception hurt less. If anything, it made everything worse. I printed copies of the most relevant emails and stored them in a folder at my apartment. Physical evidence that couldn't be deleted or denied. The email evidence was damaging, but I needed something that proved Grant was actively lying to people instead of just avoiding difficult conversations. That's when I decided to do something that felt like crossing a line, but I was already so deep into this investigation that I couldn't stop. I created a fake Instagram account and started following Grant's friends and colleagues. Not to be creepy, but to see the full picture of his social life that I'd only been getting glimpses of through his own posts. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Grant wasn't just avoiding talking about our relationship, he was actively participating in conversations about being single and available. Connor had posted a photo from a work networking event with the caption, "Trying to find Grant a date at this thing. Anyone know any single women who can tolerate his terrible jokes?" Grant had commented, "I can find my own dates, thanks, when I'm ready to stop being a workaholic." This was from last month. Last month when we were planning a romantic weekend getaway and talking about meeting each other's families. I found dozens of interactions where Grant played into the narrative that he was single and not seriously dating anyone, commenting on friends' relationship posts with jokes about being the only bachelor left in their group, responding to invitations to couples events with comments about not having anyone to bring and being perfectly happy flying solo, participating in group conversations about dating apps and single life like someone who was actively on the apps instead of in an 8-month relationship. The fake account gave me access to Grant's complete online presence, and what I saw was a man who was not only hiding his girlfriend but actively pretending she didn't exist. I documented everything, screenshots with timestamps, saved stories, archived posts, building a comprehensive record of Grant's deception that couldn't be explained away or rationalized. But I still needed to understand the scope of his lies. How many people knew about me versus how many thought he was single. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I decided to attend Freya's 4th of July barbecue. My coworker lived in Grant's neighborhood and had invited me to watch fireworks from her backyard. Grant had mentioned his family's annual barbecue for the same day, describing it as a family-only event I couldn't attend. Just relatives, he'd said. Really boring stuff, you'd hate it. I figured there was no harm in going to Freya's party. Grant's family event was supposedly across town, and what were the odds we'd run into each other? Freya's backyard was perfect for a barbecue. Mature trees, string lights, a view of the park where the city would launch fireworks after dark. Her friends were hospital employees and other service industry workers, people who understood working holidays and weekends. About an hour into the party, I was helping carry drinks when I heard familiar laughter from the yard behind us. I looked through the chain-link fence and saw Grant playing cornhole with people who were clearly his relatives. His family barbecue wasn't across town. It was literally in the backyard next to Freya's. I stood there watching the man I'd been dating for 8 months, laughing and joking with his family while I remained invisible 30 feet away. He looked relaxed and happy, completely at ease in ways I rarely saw him. His mother was setting up a dessert table. His father was manning an expensive-looking grill. Then his younger brother Wyatt spotted me through the fence. "Hey," he called out, walking toward the property line. "Are you at Freya's party? I recognize you from somewhere." I nodded, not sure what else to do. Wyatt looked like a younger version of Grant, but without the constant tension. "Cool, you should come over and join us. We've got plenty of food, and Mom always makes way too much potato salad." Grant looked over at the sound of his brother's voice and saw me standing there. The color drained from his face completely. "Actually," Wyatt continued, squinting at me through the fence, "aren't you Grant's girlfriend? Noelle, right? He's mentioned you tons of times." The world stopped spinning. Grant had mentioned me to his family? "I don't think we've been properly introduced," Wyatt said, unlatching the gate between yards. "I'm Wyatt, Grant's brother. Come on over. Mom's been dying to meet you." Behind Wyatt, I could see Grant approaching with pure panic in his eyes. "Wyatt," Grant said quickly, his voice higher than usual. "Noelle's just a friend who—" "A friend?" Wyatt interrupted, looking genuinely confused. "Dude, you literally said you were bringing your girlfriend Noelle to the barbecue. Mom made extra potato salad and everything." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at Grant, trying to process what his brother had just revealed. Grant had told his family he was bringing his girlfriend Noelle to the barbecue, but he told me it was a family-only event I couldn't attend. "Why are you pretending you don't know her?" Wyatt asked Grant, confusion turning to concern. "This is getting weird, man. Did you guys have a fight or something?" Grant looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. His family was watching now. Parents, sister Ashley, several other relatives trying to figure out what was happening. That's when Grant's mother approached the fence, having overheard the awkward exchange. "You must be Noelle," she said warmly, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "Grant's told us so much about you. We've been excited to finally meet you." I looked at Grant, then back at his mother, feeling like I was in some alternate universe where Grant actually claimed me as his girlfriend. "He told you about me?" "Of course, honey. He talks about you all the time. Says you're in nursing school and working so hard to build a better life for yourself. He's very proud of you." Grant was proud of me? He talked about me to his family? "Mom," Grant said desperately, "maybe this isn't the best time." "Nonsense," his mother interrupted, opening the gate wider. "Noelle, why don't you come join us? There's plenty of food, and I'd love to hear about your nursing program. Grant says you're going to specialize in pediatrics?" That's when his sister Ashley appeared, and I recognized her immediately from the engagement party photos. "Noelle, finally," she said, rushing over with excitement. "Grant's been talking about you for months but never bringing you around. I was starting to think you were imaginary. We figured he was just being weird about introducing girlfriends to the family," Wyatt added. "You know how he gets about keeping different parts of his life separate." The pieces started falling into place, but they weren't forming the picture I'd expected. Grant hadn't been hiding me from his family because he was ashamed of me. His family knew all about me and had been expecting to meet me for months. So why had he been keeping us apart? And why had he lied about the barbecue being family only when his family had clearly been expecting me to attend? That's when the blowback started. Grant's family was confused and concerned about why he'd been lying to me about family events while lying to his friends about my existence. His mother pulled him aside for a private conversation that I could hear from across the yard. Her voice was sharp with disappointment. "Grant Sawyer, what is wrong with you? This lovely girl thinks you're ashamed of her, and meanwhile you've been telling us for months how wonderful she is." Grant's sister Ashley was equally confused and frustrated. She cornered me near the dessert table while Grant was getting lectured by his mother. "Noelle, I'm so sorry about whatever weirdness is happening here. Grant talks about you constantly. We've all been wondering when he was going to stop being so mysterious and actually bring you around. He talks about me all the time. He's obsessed with you. Says you're the smartest, most driven person he's ever met. We've been dying to meet the woman who finally got our commitment-phobic brother to settle down." Wyatt joined our conversation, looking equally baffled by the situation. "I don't understand what's happening," he said. "Grant told us yesterday that you were definitely coming today. Mom bought extra food, Dad cleaned the guest bathroom, Ashley made a whole playlist because Grant said you love 80s music." The evidence was mounting that Grant's family not only knew about me, but had been actively preparing to meet me. Meanwhile, Grant was being interrogated by his father near the grill. I could catch fragments of their conversation across the yard. "Son, I don't understand why you'd lie to that girl about a family barbecue when you've been talking our ears off about her for months." Grant's response was too quiet to hear, but his father's reply was clear enough. "Well, you better figure out how to fix this mess before you lose the best thing that's ever happened to you." The barbecue revelation was creating a domino effect of confusion and disappointment from Grant's family. They'd been expecting to meet me for months, and Grant's deception was making everyone question what else he'd been lying about. His cousin Jasper, who'd driven 3 hours to attend the barbecue, was particularly direct about his frustration. "Grant, this is nuts. You've been talking about Noelle for months like she's the love of your life, and now you're acting like you barely know her. What's your problem?" Grant's Aunt Susan, who'd apparently been asking about me since Christmas, was equally confused. "I brought that nursing school brochure you asked for," she told me, pulling a packet from her purse. "Grant said you were interested in the pediatric program at State University." Grant had been asking his family for information about nursing programs on my behalf. Information he'd never shared with me, because that would have revealed that his family knew I existed. The whole situation was spiraling into a public public embarrassment for Grant in front of his extended family. People were starting to question his honesty and his treatment of me. His grandmother, a tiny woman who looked like she could cut glass with her stare, was particularly unimpressed with Grant's behavior. "Young man, I raised you better than to treat a nice girl like some kind of secret," she said loud enough for the whole party to hear. "What would your grandfather think about this nonsense?" Grant was getting called out by multiple family members for lying to me while simultaneously lying to his friends about me. The deception was creating problems in every direction, but I still didn't understand why he'd been maintaining these elaborate lies in the first place. All I wanted was to understand why I wasn't good enough to be claimed. Somehow it turned into a public interrogation of Grant's character by his own family at their annual barbecue. That's when things got serious in ways I hadn't anticipated. Grant's deception wasn't just hurting our relationship anymore. It was affecting his standing with his family and raising questions about his integrity. His mother cornered me while Grant was being lectured by his father and grandmother simultaneously. "Noelle, I need you to know that Grant has never said a single negative thing about you," she said, her voice urgent and concerned. "He talks about you like you hung the moon. I don't understand what's happening here, but it's not because he's ashamed of you. Then why has he been lying to me about family events while telling his friends he's single? I have no idea, but we're going to find out. This isn't the young man I raised." Grant's sister Ashley joined our conversation, equally concerned about her brother's behavior. "Noelle, Grant asked me last month if you'd be interested in being in my bridal party. He wanted to make sure you felt included in family events. Why would he do that if he was trying to hide you?" "He asked you that?" "He's been planning to propose to you. He asked Dad for advice about ring shopping and wanted to make sure the family would welcome you properly when you became his fiancé." The information Ashley was sharing completely contradicted everything I thought I knew about Grant's feelings toward our relationship. Wyatt overheard our conversation and added his own perspective. "Grant's been different since he started dating you. Happier, more relaxed. He used to be this stressed-out workaholic who never talked about his personal life. Now he can't shut up about your nursing program and how proud he is of your work ethic. But he's been telling his friends he's single. That's weird. He definitely doesn't act single when he talks to us about you." Grant's family was painting a picture of someone who is proud of our relationship and planning a future together. But that directly contradicted the evidence I'd gathered about his lies to friends and colleagues. Something wasn't adding up, and the contradiction was creating bigger problems than just relationship drama. Grant's behavior was now being questioned by his entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. Everyone was asking why he'd been lying to me while simultaneously asking them for advice about our relationship. His reputation for honesty and integrity was taking a hit in front of people whose opinions clearly mattered to him. The barbecue was turning into a public referendum on Grant's character, and he was failing the test in front of everyone who'd known him since childhood. His grandfather, a retired military officer who clearly commanded respect in the family, finally intervened. "Grant, you need to figure out what you're doing and why you're doing it," he said in a voice that suggested this was not a request. "Because right now you look like a liar and a fool, and that's not how we raised you. Either you're serious about this young woman or you're not. But you don't get to treat her like a secret while asking us for relationship advice." The whole family was now invested in resolving the situation. This wasn't just about me and Grant anymore. It was about Grant's integrity and his family's reputation for raising honest, decent people. His mother announced that Grant needed to explain himself immediately or face consequences beyond just relationship problems. "I'm calling a family meeting," she declared, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd been organizing family gatherings for 30 years. "We're going to get to the bottom of this right now." All I wanted was to understand why my boyfriend was ashamed of me. Somehow it turned into a family tribunal questioning his basic honesty and character. After that, everything shifted. The barbecue had created a crisis that forced Grant to confront whatever he'd been avoiding for 8 months. His family wasn't going to let him continue lying to me while simultaneously lying to his friends about me. The deception had become unsustainable once it was exposed in front of everyone. Grant's mother set up chairs in a circle on the patio and announced that nobody was leaving until Grant explained why he'd been lying to everyone about everything. "Grant, you have exactly 10 minutes to make sense of this situation before I start making phone calls to find out what else you've been lying about." Grant's father was equally serious about resolving the crisis immediately. "Son, your behavior reflects on this entire family. If you're having problems with honesty and integrity, we need to address that now before it affects your career and your future." The family meeting had turned into an intervention. Grant was surrounded by relatives demanding explanations for behavior that had damaged his reputation and hurt someone they already considered part of the family. His grandmother was particularly direct about her disappointment. "I didn't fight in 3 wars so my great-grandson could grow up to be a liar and a coward," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You fix this mess right now or you find somewhere else to spend your holidays." Grant's extended family was now involved in our relationship crisis. Aunts and uncles who'd driven hours for the barbecue were witnessing Grant's character being questioned in real time. His cousin Meredith, who worked as a therapist, offered her professional perspective. "Grant, this pattern of compartmentalizing your life and lying to different groups of people suggests deeper issues with authenticity and self-acceptance. You might want to consider counseling." The family barbecue had become a group therapy session focused on Grant's dishonesty and its impact on everyone around him. But the biggest revelation was still coming. I led with the simplest question when Grant and I finally got a moment alone on the patio while his family argued about next steps. "Your family knows about me." Grant ran his hands through his hair, looking more miserable than I'd ever seen him. "Yes. They've known for months." "Yes, but you told me this was a family-only event. You said I couldn't come." Grant was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands instead of meeting my eyes. "I was scared you'd realize how different our backgrounds are." "What do you mean?" "Noelle, look around. Look at this house, this neighborhood. Look at how my family lives." I glanced around the backyard for the first time since arriving. Nice, but not mansion-level nice. Upper middle class maybe, but nothing that screamed wealth or privilege. "I don't understand." "My family's going to love you," Grant said, his voice cracking. "My mom already thinks you're amazing based on everything I've told her. But they're going to ask questions about your life, your family, your background. And I was terrified that once you saw the difference between our worlds, you'd realize I wasn't good enough for you." I stared at him, trying to process what he just said. "You thought I'd think you weren't good enough for me. You're working 2 jobs and putting yourself through nursing school, building something from nothing, fighting for every opportunity, earning everything through your own hard work. I got my job because my dad plays golf with one of the partners at my firm. The conversation was taking a turn I hadn't expected. Grant, I've been thinking you were ashamed of me for months. Ashamed of you? He looked genuinely shocked. Noelle, you're the most impressive person I've ever dated. You're brilliant, driven, kind to everyone you meet. I've been terrified that once you met my family and saw how easy my life has been, you'd realize you deserve someone who's actually earned what they have. But you told Connor you were keeping your options open. You never post about us on social media. Grant's face crumpled, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time since I'd known him. I heard you talking to Lisa once about how you didn't want to be someone's charity case. You said you'd never want to date someone who felt sorry for you or was slumming it with someone from a different social class. I remembered that conversation. I'd been talking about a guy from nursing school who'd spent our entire date making condescending comments about how hard I worked. So you thought if you acted like we were equals, I wouldn't figure out that you come from money. My college friends are all trust fund kids who've never worked a day in their lives. I was embarrassed for you to meet them because I knew they'd say something ignorant or classist. I didn't want you to have to deal with their assumptions about why we were together. And the social media thing? I was scared if I posted about us, your friends would look at my profile and see the kind of lifestyle I live and think I was using you, or that you were with me for money instead of feelings. I sat down heavily on his parents' patio furniture, trying to process this complete reversal of everything I'd believed about our relationship. Grant, I thought you were hiding me because you were embarrassed about my job, because I wasn't sophisticated enough for your world. Your job? Noelle, you're putting yourself through nursing school while working nights at a diner to pay for everything yourself. That's incredible. I'm embarrassed that I got my career handed to me on a silver platter. But the holiday party, I knew if you came, people would ask what you did for work, and I was scared my coworkers would be condescending or make comments that would hurt your feelings. I thought I was protecting you from their assumptions and judgments. But instead, you made me feel like you were ashamed to be seen with me. Grant started crying harder. I was trying so hard not to be another privileged guy who treats his girlfriend like a charity case that I ended up making you feel like a secret I was ashamed of. We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us processing how completely we'd misunderstood each other's motivations and fears. We're both idiots, I said finally. Yeah, we really are. Grant's mother appeared on the patio, looking concerned about the length of our private conversation. Is everything okay out here? You both look like you've been crying. Grant looked at me and I nodded. Mom, I'd like you to properly meet my girlfriend Noelle, and I owe her and all of you a huge apology for making this introduction so unnecessarily complicated. Well, it's about time, she said, smiling and pulling me into a hug. We've been wondering when Grant was going to stop being so mysterious and actually bring you around. The confrontation revealed that Grant and I had spent 8 months protecting ourselves from imaginary problems while creating real ones. He thought I'd leave him if I knew he came from privilege. I thought he was ashamed of my working class background. We were both so scared of being rejected for who we really were that we'd nearly destroyed something genuine by trying to manage each other's perceptions. Grant's family spent the rest of the barbecue asking me questions about nursing school and sharing embarrassing stories about Grant's childhood. They were warm, welcoming, and genuinely interested in my goals and ambitions. Nobody made me feel like I didn't belong or like I was somehow beneath their standards. Nobody asked invasive questions about my background or made assumptions about why Grant and I were together. His mother told stories about Grant trying to give himself a haircut before school pictures. His sister showed me wedding planning photos and asked if I'd be interested in being in the bridal party. Wyatt asked thoughtful questions about healthcare and patient care. His father talked about his own first job washing dishes and how much respect he had for people in service industries. They treated me like someone they'd been excited to meet for months, not like an unwelcome surprise or a disappointing choice. The following week, Grant introduced me to his college friends at a group dinner downtown. Some of them were exactly as privileged and clueless as he'd warned me they'd be, but others were surprisingly down to earth and interesting, including Connor, who turned out to be much more perceptive than his text messages had suggested. More importantly, Grant didn't try to hide or apologize for my background. He talked proudly about my nursing program and shut down anyone who made ignorant comments. Noelle's twice as smart and hardworking as any of us, he told Connor when Connor made a tone-deaf joke about working-class women. Maybe think before you talk about things you don't understand. Grant started being transparent about his financial situation, not to show off but to make sure I understood he wasn't expecting me to split expensive dinners that would strain my budget. I want to take you to nice places because I enjoy sharing those experiences with you and I can afford it, he explained. Not because I think you can't take care of yourself, but because I want us to do things together that we both enjoy. I started being honest about my insecurities and defensive reactions to anything that felt like pity or condescension. I need to know that you see me as an equal partner, I told him. Even if our bank accounts don't match, I need to know you respect my intelligence and goals and that you're not with me because you think I need rescuing. Grant started integrating me into his world properly, instead of trying to protect me from it. I met his work colleagues at company events, where I learned to navigate their sometimes awkward questions with confidence. I appeared in his social media posts for the first time, and while some of his friends made comments that revealed their own biases, Grant consistently stood up for me. We went to restaurants in our own town and ran into his friends without him acting like it was a catastrophe that needed to be managed. He stopped trying to shield me from potentially awkward social situations, and started letting me handle my own interactions with his privileged friends and colleagues. You don't need me to protect you from anything, he realized after watching me hold my own in a conversation with some particularly obnoxious investment bankers. You're perfectly capable of standing up for yourself. It didn't look like TV justice, but here's what actually changed everything. Grant and I learned to communicate directly instead of making assumptions about what the other person was thinking or feeling. We stopped trying to protect each other from imaginary problems and started addressing real ones. His family became like a second family to me. His mother calls to check on my difficult shifts and brags about my achievements to her friends. We learned to navigate the financial differences in our relationship in ways that feel fair and respectful to both of us. Grant pays for expensive activities he he initiates, but I contribute to our shared experiences in ways that work with my budget. I graduated from nursing school with honors and got a job in the cardiac ICU. Grant was in the front row at graduation, cheering louder than anyone when they called my name. His family came to celebrate afterward, and his mother cried harder than my own mother when I walked across the stage. Grant learned to be proud of his accomplishments without feeling guilty about his advantages. I learned to accept generosity without assuming it came with judgment or expectations. We both worked on our insecurities in therapy. Grant learned that trying to manage someone else's reactions by controlling information is just another form of dishonesty. I learned that sometimes the person you think is ashamed of you is actually scared they're not good enough for you. The experience taught us that sometimes love looks like protection, even when it's misguided and counterproductive. But true partnership requires vulnerability and honesty, even when it's scary. Grant still comes to visit me during my occasional weekend shifts at Murphy's Diner. He tips generously without making a show of it and treats my coworkers with the same respect he shows his professional colleagues. "Your boyfriend's pretty great," my coworker Sandra told me after Grant's third visit. "He treats you like you're special, but he treats the rest of us like human beings too." The nursing job has been everything I hoped for. I love the science, the patient care, and the feeling that I'm making a real difference in people's lives during their most vulnerable moments. Grant is proud of my career in ways that feel genuine and supportive without being condescending. He brags about my achievements to anyone who will listen. "You're literally saving lives every day," he tells people when they ask what I do. How cool is that? We're planning to move in together next year, and this time the conversation includes both of our perspectives without either of us trying to manage the other person's feelings. We're building something new together that acknowledges our different backgrounds while belonging to both of us. The most important thing I learned is that sometimes the biggest barrier to a healthy relationship is the assumptions we make about what the other person thinks of us. I spent 8 months convinced that Grant saw me as beneath him, when he was actually spending those same months convinced that I'd eventually realize he was beneath me. We were both so busy protecting ourselves from imaginary rejection that we nearly destroyed something real and meaningful. The experience made me better at direct communication in all my relationships. Instead of assuming I know why someone is behaving a certain way, I ask questions and give them the opportunity to explain themselves. It also made me more confident in my own worth and less defensive about my background. I don't need to prove I deserve to be claimed by someone or apologize for where I come from. If someone can't see my value, that's their limitation, not my failing. The barbecue revelation could have gone very differently if Wyatt hadn't spotted me through that fence and forced the truth into the open. We might have continued our pattern of miscommunication and mutual protection until the relationship died from lack of honesty and trust. Instead, we learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is trust the other person to handle the truth, even when you're scared of what that truth might reveal. He thought I'd leave him if I knew he came from privilege. Turns out I almost left him because he made me feel like a secret worth hiding.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.